Welcome, everybody. Happy mid-September here. We're all back to school now. Um, Give everybody just a second here and some quick housekeeping stuff, and then for today, I do want to nerd out a little bit on just I don't know how many questions you guys get around this stuff. Probably not a ton. But just, what are some things that families can do to potentially lower their student aid index, the SAI, maybe be eligible for more need-based financial aid? Again, I think for most of you, again, this feels like you're giving, financial advice or whatever. So you probably don't like to play in the sandbox too much. But if nothing else, for your own knowledge, and again, happy to ask questions about it. And there's kind of some good overlap with some of the new rule changes that are really relevant here too, specifically with the FAFSA. Um, but first things first, couple things. I hope I will get to see some of you. I know that I will get to see some of you, but I hope I'll get to see as many of you as possible in Columbus this week. We got some of our team flying out today, myself and some others flying out tomorrow morning. So we will be in Columbus for NACAC. Who cares about that? But you should care about, where did this go? You should care about attending, wait for it, attending Cappy Hour on Friday evening at 5 o'clock. So we are going to be hosting a Cappy Hour, all you can eat, all you can drink, let everybody let their hair down. It's Friday, you're, away from the kids, away from work, all of that. So I just put a link in the chat here. So we are, if you would, even if you're thinking about coming, just sign up here. So this place, it's the Parlay Bar and Kitchen. I guess it's like right by the convention center. So just kind of we can walk out at the end of the day there, and then again 5 to 7 at this place. Um, Again, we're gonna do open bar and food and all that. Just have some fun, get to meet each other face to face. So please sign up, even if if you're out there, even if you think you can make it. Bring your buddies, bring your colleagues, whoever. Everybody's invited, and again, would love to meet in the flesh or meet again in the flesh. Because this is usually how we hang out. Let's see. Other thing here, we are very calendar is full in terms of, or I shouldn't say full, but it's filling quickly in terms of um, September and October CSS profile and FAFSA presentations, right? We have these presentations where our experts will be in front of the room, essentially go line by line through each of these applications and best practices, and obviously live Q&A. I think it's really, really helpful for parents, for students, for families, maybe for you all that are going through this. So if you have not scheduled that yet, and obviously we'll talk some financial aid 101 as well, but it's really focused on, all right, class 2026 and maybe a precursor for the younger families. How do you navigate these forms? Let's make sure we don't put our retirement accounts on the FAFSA, and let's make sure we don't put our home equity on the FAFSA, and here's what divorced and separated families need to do, and how it's different between the CSS profile and the FAFSA and things like this. So, and of course, deadlines and all of that. So, please, if you have not signed up, I just put our email in there, counselor@collegeaidpro.com. Or let me put this link in there as well if you want to schedule some time with us and take advantage of our any of our free resources. Here is that. Let me see. Here is that as well. For those of you that knew, I'm Matt Carpenter, by the way. It says Matthew Carpenter. Only my grandmother, RIP, and aunt call me that. But here we go. I guess Zoom does as well. But this link that I just put in there, right? You can just book some time to meet with us. We can learn about what kind of resources you provide and how we might be able to supplement those. Learn a little bit more about our software, kind of the score and aviance of financial aid and scholarships. You're signed up for Coffee Talk because you're here, and we got our podcast as well. I think that's kind of fun. We're trying to put some more weight behind that. Peg and myself. If you like podcasts, check us out if that's your speed. Okay, beautiful. So, any questions? Please fire at will. Put them in the Q&A. I will get to all of them as best I can here, and let me just kind of bring you through this. And this is something that we share with parents for some of our presentations, but again, I think it might be helpful for you all as well. Maybe this stuff is old hat, but if not, it's worth it's worth talking about. So, I mean, this is something that we say all the time. This process is overwhelming. It's complicated. It's always changing. The system as a whole, right? These last few years being Exhibit A. Colleges change from one year to the next. Colleges change midstream, as you guys know, right? I'm sure you see it on the admissions front. We see it, excuse me, on the financial front as well. So here's some things that we can do, and this is just what we beat people over the head with, like we can control, right? We can't control all that stuff. Here's some stuff we can control. Let's do that. Um, so the SAI, right? This is something that we're always trying to have families obviously understand what it means, student aid index, and this is dictated, but there's the federal methodology that comes from the end result of your FAFSA. There's the institutional methodology that comes from the end result of your CSS profile. And then within each of those two broad buckets, each of the colleges kind of have their own business models, right? But there's some kind of common threads that we can do that can help ourselves or said another way, not hurt ourselves. Okay. Um, okay, so these colleges will look at any money in the student's name with way more emphasis than they will in the parent's name. Okay, so if we have 10,000 bucks in our kids' savings account, let's say that, maybe they're really industrious kids, they save their bar mitzvah and first communion money, whatever. 10,000 bucks is not a gigantic number, but some of the colleges, you see that we say they look at 20%, 25%. We've seen cases where they'll look at 50% of the money in the student's name, and some edge cases where colleges just tell us, like, we take 100% of, if there's 10,000 bucks in the kid's name, we just add that on to their SAI for year one. Okay. Whereas $10,000 in the parent's name, to just kind of stick with that hypothetical, it's not really enough to move the needle. And the parents do have a little asset protection allowance, whereas students do not, right? Um, so I always use that example for parents to be like, guys, if you have 10,000 bucks in your kid's student account, put your name on that savings account. Okay. And then when you go to report it on the CSS profile, you include it as your asset as opposed to the students. You are perfectly within the rules of the game. You're perfectly kosher. There's no, timing with this, right? It's not like income. They're looking at prior tax year, right? Assets. They are looking at the day you submit these financial aid applications. The other thing here that's relevant, one of the most common and mission critical mistakes that families make. It's really easy to make this, right? I say this in a very non-judgmental way. If they have a 529, right, the most popular investment vehicle when you're saving for college, they assume it's a student asset because common knowledge tells them as much, right? Well, I see their name on the statement. I see their social security number on the statement. It's for their college expenses. It must be their asset. No, no, you as the parent are the owner of that. They are just the beneficiary, right? So not only would you be reporting it incorrectly if you put it in the student's name, you're going to kill your SAI, right? So that's something we always want to flag as well. Easy mistake to make, and we want to make sure that families are not making it, right? And here you go. I get ahead of myself there. But the other thing that we just flag here is grandparents, right? Grandparents that own the 529s. Now we don't have to report those on the FAFSA because again, they're not asking about grandparent assets. They're asking about parent and student assets. The student is just a beneficiary. So if a student is fortunate enough to have this situation, right? May they be so lucky, they're not on the FAFSA at all. Excuse me while I drink my healthy kombucha. I'm not going to be healthy on Friday though. If you guys see me live on Friday, you'll speaking of no judgment, no judgment, please. Okay. Do you own your home, right? You all know this, right? That a lot of these colleges, and but this again, this is not common knowledge to parents, right? Just about all parents that we explain this to are like, what are you talking about? That Boston College treats the equity in my home as a checking account because they do, right? And NYU, Syracuse University, obviously these are just a few examples of the several dozen colleges that consider, if you own your primary residence, what that's fair game in terms of your SAI and your need-based financial aid eligibility. So we help them. Well, what are some things I can do to mitigate the damage here? Well, you don't want to overvalue your home. One of the most common tactics that we can defend is using 20% less than our market value of our home, right? It's called the IRS quick sale value rule. Okay. So the um let's say my home's worth $1 million and I don't have any mortgage on it, right? Neither of those are true, by the way. But if they were, and I sell my home for $1 million tomorrow, I'm not going to put $1 million in my pocket, right? I'm going to pay taxes. I'm going to pay fees on average. I'm going to pay 20% less than kind of the amount of equity that is in the property. So I'm going to put $800,000, even though I didn't have in my pocket, again, on average, even though I didn't have a mortgage on it, right? So this is something that we can do when we report the value of our home to the colleges. Yes, you can use your assessed value. Yes, you can put whatever you want. Okay, truthfully, you can put whatever you want, and it is a completely art. There is no, actual market value of any of our homes, right? If I'm going to buy your home, I think it's worth something different than you are as you're selling it. So you're not, even if you're incredibly aggressive, I'll use New York City for an example, right? Where a lot of these assessed values for the homes are like 300,000 and you're living in, a $6 million brownstone, right? That's just a weird thing with New York City to keep people's taxes, somewhat under control. You can do that and you're not going to get in trouble from NYU, or NYU is actually a great example, but they're going to go, huh, you got a family of six, you own your home, and you're in the village, and it's a $300,000 value is what you're putting, right? They're just going to go gut check it, right? They're going to go look on Zillow, and they're going to look on Redfin, and they're going to look on, these types of. A lot of times they'll use the Federal Housing Index multiplier, and they're going to see and they're going to take the highest of those values, right? Especially in cases like that. So, and they're not going to go back to the family, and the family's going to be, none the wiser that they put 300,000 and actually NYU says, I think it's worth 6 million, right? Um, so that's where it's kind of like part art and part science. So you want to get to the lowest defensible value, but you don't want to be, you have to, again, and you can do that and feel comfortable about that. But again, that those are the examples where you kind of got to use your head a little bit, and just know that what you put down there is not necessarily what the colleges are going to use. And then there's these these, excuse me, these in between schools that, yes, they consider home equity, but they don't look at all of it like Syracuse does. They look at a percentage of it, and that percentage is tied to your household income, right? So it's kind of this other layer of complexities in the formula. That's why we have our software guys, right? That's why all that's baked into the algorithm. So families don't have to know this. You don't have to know this. You just put your information in, and we're going to say, here's how much home equity Syracuse is going to look at versus NYU versus Amherst versus whatever, right? But we want people to know how it works. Okay, so business owners, right? Thankfully, this was a great change where we went back to the way it should be on the FAFSA. This was, I would argue, it was one of the most positive things to come out of kind of the big beautiful bill changes as it pertains to higher education. Um, I'll go on a quick tangent here. So we found out, I'll tell you a non-positive change that came, and we'll see how frequent this is, but um, we partnered with a group in New Hampshire, a CBO, right, community-based organization that focuses on underprivileged students and families and helping send them their kids to college. And they were grant funded, and they invested in our program, right? The software and the education and the experts to help these kids go to college. It's just an amazing program. We work with a bunch of them around the country. So if you know any of these, please put us in touch. Um, so we were psyched, excited. It's in my backyard, right? I'm just north of Boston here. We're like 30 miles from the New Hampshire border. We just found out this morning it got pulled as part of one of the big, beautiful bill changes. So now so anyways, that's a not so positive change with the big beautiful bill, and I know that's just one microcosm there. So sorry for the fresh on my mind. So business owners, right? Thankfully, they changed this rule back where if you have less than 100 employees, you're self-employed, right? It doesn't matter how your business is structured, if it's a S corp, C corp, LLC, sole proprietorship, partnership, it doesn't matter. But if you're self-employed and you have less than 100 employees, which is the vast majority of folks that are even paying attention to this stuff, you don't have to put anything on the FAFSA as it pertains to your business, the value, what you have for assets in there. Beautiful thing, because this tripped a lot of people up last year. So make sure that that message is disseminated to your school, your district, et cetera, because it still doesn't do a good job on the FAFSA. It should say like in bright red letters, like most of you should put zero here. You're only going to put anything if you have more than 100 employees. Of course, that part is buried. So most people still put a value in there. And how the formula works, it really accentuates that value because even if you put my business is worth $1, that's going to really hurt your SAI because the formula knows you have more than 100 employees. So you must have some level of success type of deal that's worth more than that value. So but again, just easy places to make mistakes. A tricky thing here, and there's no kind of right or wrong answer, and when it's a real gray area, and we will err on the side that's going to be best for the families, not the colleges, right? That's just who we're advocates for. Those are our biggest stakeholders. But the is when you have other income producing real estate, right? It's a no-brainer if it's in an LLC. If it's in an LLC and you have other properties and it's going to show up on, Schedule C or Schedule E of your tax return, that's a business. So we don't have to include it on the FAFSA. It's a business with less than 100 employees. If it is not technically structured as an LLC and it is just a piece of real estate, but it produces income, it has expenses. Therefore, I consider a business to be, this is one man's opinion here. If it produces revenue and it has expenses, I think that's a business. I'm comfortable not having it on the FAFSA. Okay. If you call colleges, if you call a Department of Education, they're probably going to have a different interpretation. Depends which college you talk to. It depends which individual picks up the phone and all of that. But that one is a tricky one, right? And we're always going to err on the family side. Now, a college could have a different interpretation. Then it's going to be a conversation. On the CSS profile, it doesn't matter whether it's in an LLC, or not. They're going to ask us about other real estate, and we get, where is it? What's the address? What's the value? And some specifics, on each of those properties. And there's nothing to do to get cute there. It's on our Schedule E, no matter what, right? I think you guys all know this, but it's always bears repeating. And now we have just a little more data where this is actually played out in practice, right? But the new or at least new-ish rule for divorced or separated families. Now they're still using the same terminology, so they still want the custodial household to complete the FAFSA. But the custodial has a new definition, right? It has nothing to do with who the student lives with, where they live with the most, has nothing to do with it. Okay. The only thing that matters is who provides more financial support to the student, right? That's an important point of emphasis because a lot of times I'll be talking to a family in this situation and they'll say, well, he paid me child support. So I guess he pays, whatever he pays $12,000 of child support a year. So I guess he provides more financial support. Maybe to you, but not necessarily to the student, right? And then we kind of unwind that conversation. Well, you're paying the mortgage, you're buying the groceries, right? You're feeding them, you're paying for the clubs and the sports and the blah, 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 right? And then really quickly, a lot of those families go, a lot of those conversations like, yeah, I'm the one that's actually giving more financial support, to the student. So again, here's a huge gray area where the families can have some, in some cases, of course, not all, some element of control. So we're always like, guys, let's be strategic here. You want the parent that has the least income, the least assets, the one that's going to have the lowest SAI to complete the FAFSA. If there's any type of if the relationship is amicable at all, or you guys are at least, and we know for plenty of them that's not the case, right? If we're rolling in the same direction at all, right, for this kid, let's make sure that that family that's going to be more beneficial for our need-based eligibility is the one that's providing the most financial support to the student. It's not that hard to do that. Again, this is I'm making some generalizations here if you're strategic about it, right? And if you're on the same page. And this is also something, again, you are completely on your own in terms of reporting. No colleges are verifying this because you can't, right? Because the only way they would verify, because some college, we talked to a lot of these colleges to ask them this question before it started to say, like, well, what's your verification process going to be if, families decide to get cute and they're like, some thought about doing that, but then it all got dropped because they're like, this, the ex-husband could be a billionaire oil tycoon, right? And so his, resources are going to be out of the stratosphere, and maybe, the ex-partner over here has no means and not a lot of income, but that doesn't mean that this person with all the resources actually provides more financial support to the student, right? So, um, and again, honestly, most families, when I ask this question, and let's use some very broad percentages here. I'd say 80% of the families that I say, like, well, who does provide more financial support to the student? It is usually like, well, I don't know, right? They start doing the math. Well, again, this they do. I pay for this, they pay for that. It's probably pretty close. I'm like, well, there you go. So, anyways, that's an interesting one where there can be opportunities. Yeah, it doesn't matter if the separation is new, but I'm glad this question came up. It doesn't matter if the separation happened yesterday or 10 years ago, right? If they're separated on the day that they submitted the financial aid applications, they're considered divorced or separated, right? It is in real time, okay? Now, here's what we do, and this is where it's um I don't know. It takes a level of expertise or experience. But for the families that we work with that are in those situations where they're looking at the so let's say it's 2026 family that got divorced or separated 6 months ago. These colleges are looking at the 24 tax returns, right? Prior tax year. How we want to complete the FAFSA and the CSS profile. This sounds very unorthodox because it is, but it is how the colleges want you to do it. We're going to manually break apart the family's income as in assets, as if that the dust has settled there, right? So I'm going to say, hey, I'm divorced or separated, right? It's going to ask us that, right, on both applications. And then when it asks me for my 2024 income and my today assets, I'm going to put my, right, if I'm the custodial parent, I'm going to put my 2024 income. Of course, I have to estimate the taxes paid because we were joint right then. Excuse me. And then I'm going to put the value of my assets as of today on the CSS profile. We both own the home still, right? That again, this divorce is not finalized, whatever. And presumably we're going to each take half. I'm going to put half of the value of the home. I'm going to present it to the colleges, all the colleges, right? Of course, this is not going to align with my 2024 tax returns, et cetera. That is okay. We are going to have a conversation. We're going to set expectations with the family that this is going to be a clunky process. And we're going to have to go through verification. We're going to have to show some documentation that we have been divorced or separated since we filed jointly in 2024. But that is the recommendation for how you want to present it. It does not have to be a legal separation. Good question. Now, I'm speaking for everybody and I shouldn't do that. Some colleges will say we got to see something legal and we're not just going to take your word for it that you guys got in a big fight last weekend or you want to try to get cute with, the system here, right? Some colleges will ask for legal documentation, right? I will tell you, having done this for 20 years and probably and worked with situations like this thousands of times at least. I can count on one hand at most how many times I've seen a college ask for that. They reserve the right to, doesn't mean it won't happen. So I can't sit here and guarantee it, but unbelievably rare. Um, okay. What else do I want to talk about? Okay, prior tax year. I think we hit that. And then again, too, you guys get this question all the time, right? Well, oh my God, we had the best year of our lives in 2024 income wise, but that was an anomaly, and now we're going to get screwed. Appeal, right? And get ready to get that documentation together. We're going to appeal. One-time bonus, one-time IRA, 401k distribution, one-time inheritance, all these things, right? We want to get ready ahead of time to appeal. So give me just a sec here because obviously our job is to coach, school counselors and families up with how this works, right? But our goal that we always state or try to state at the beginning of our presentations is like, look, we're going to show you how this works. That's great, but we got to show how it works for you, right? And that's what our platform does. If I know most of you are sharing this with your families. If you're not, I recommend test it yourselves. Talk to us. We'll give you a tour of it. But this is again everything that I just shared is baked into the platform, right? So families can onboard themselves and know, okay, well, here's what my federal SAI is going to be versus my institutional SAI. If I want to know what any college costs me, I can do that, right? So I just put in here somebody throw out a college. Put in your alma mater or maybe a college that you like or hate or whatever. Put it in the chat. We'll take a look at one and I'll show you a couple things here that might be helpful that are not necessarily obvious to um, okay. All right, Baylor. Let's look at Baylor. Okay, so Baylor, right? Scary sticker price, 85,000. We're gonna pay 55,000, right? And if we anytime we want to look at the why, we can do a deep dive, right? So it's gonna have, some what I think is helpful information in terms of the admissions stuff, but we're not, again, we partner with Score, we partner with Zello, we have an integration already live with Naviance. I'm forgetting another one, but we partner with those guys because we're light on the admission side, they're light on the financial side, right? Which is why we're good partners here. By the way, if your school is a power school, and you're not integrated with us yet, right into us. It doesn't cost anything. You just got to get permission from your the powers that be, usually the CTO or the superintendent. Um, but when I want to look at financial stuff, it's going to show me a couple things. Number one, it's going to show me what's their business model, their SAI base. Are they a federal methodology school or the institutional methodology? If they're a federal methodology school, I know they don't look at home equity. I know they only look at one household. Whereas institutional schools, they could be looking at home equity or some of it. They could be looking, and in most cases, they are both households, right? And we have, not just what you're going to pay year one, but what you're going to pay all 4 years. Um, for every college in the country, we have every scholarship that they offer, qualifications for each. We're really good at projecting, well, what's your kid going to get? Right. And the other thing we like to do is make sure that, as you guys are coaching them up on, okay, we got to have our safety target reach schools. I don't know why this thing's being extra slow. I know we're doing some updates today, but you got to have your safety target reach schools. We want them to have the same thing from an affordability standpoint, and I know you do too, right? I think one of the hardest parts for school counselors is kind of flying blind in terms of I think for most of you, in your sleep what are going to be good fits for these kids from an from academically, culturally, geographically, again, you can that's day one stuff for you. But I think oftentimes you're like, well, I hope I'm also recommending schools that are going to be good fits for these guys financially because I don't really maybe have an idea what this family's resources are, but I don't really know. And I promise you, as someone that sees behind the scenes a lot, it can be misleading on both sides. What you might perceive. And again, and maybe you don't know how good this particular school is with financial aid, or did they consider home equity or all of it? Are we a school like Vanderbilt that, yeah, we look at all the home equity in the same way NYU does, but if we're divorced or separated, We don't look at that at all. So, which in U Chicago and Santa Clara, those are some other examples of just like their institutional methodology schools, but they're kind of exceptions within that. That's more than any parent should know or you should know. That's why, again, it's kind of baked into the platform, so everybody just has access to that inside baseball. Um, okay, so I think those were my kind of my biggies here. We can go. Let's just, well, one more thing I would just want to show you in terms of how we, a couple things of how we, our, we always try to start. You guys know how overwhelming and complicated and convoluted and stressful this process is. So we're always trying to like when we've spent, I don't know, spent most of my career basically trying to build this platform, but my motivation is children's book, color by numbers. This is how we need to talk to people initially, right? That's a lot of what my experience has shown me. Even if you're a very savvy individual, right, in your business savvy, people just get, yeah, and well, now it's my kids, it's my money, and all right, let's start with children's book, color by money. Put any of your colleges on here, and we're going to put it into a nice affordability heat map for you. These are going to be good outcomes. These are going to be great. Ideal means we don't borrow anything. This is, we got to pump the brakes. You see Santa Barbara, right, is in the caution part of it. And as we look at this target reach safety, again, kind of heat map, we just are coaching families. It doesn't mean, just like you guys tell them, apply to some reaches. Absolutely. Apply to some that are might be outside of our sweet spot from an affordability standpoint. And guess what? Just like you guys know, but parents don't, it doesn't mean Williams College is $100,000 college, but they're going to be more affordable than the in-state state school, right? They're going to be way more affordable than the out-of-state state school at UC Santa Barbara. Sticker price is a distraction, but this helps them just get in a sense of like, okay, we have some balance. And then if they want to drill down, if they want to take a closer look, well, why is, Dickinson a good outcome from an affordability standpoint? And this is where we can get really, again, I don't know, into the weeds. So here's the thresholds in terms of obviously the ideal, the dream. We don't borrow anything. That's not realistic for most families. A great outcome, I say it's a grand slam for families because it is. If your kid borrows $27,000 or less via the federal direct student loan, you've hit a grand slam as a family, full stop. Our next threshold is that they borrow less than we expect them to make their senior year, their first year after graduating from college, based on that particular college, based on the major. We know this is going to change. We know this isn't perfect, but it's helpful to get rooted in something concrete, right? When families are thinking about ROI, and they should. So the sticker price over 4 years at what school do we do? Dickinson, right, is going to be 375. After financial aid and scholarships, it's 203 minus our budget, right? We're always having families think about their resources that they have or what they can do from a monthly cash flow standpoint or what they might borrow. By the way, that might be zero, okay? But we want them thinking about that. So they can, see into the future and say, okay, well, if my kid goes here, somebody, presumably the student's going to have to borrow 38,000. That's less than we expect them to make their first year based on the major base of the school of 109,000, right, at the school. That's great, right? Or that's good is what we call it, right? Whereas, when we look at a UC Santa Barbara, okay, well, and we go to kind of look at that affordability deal, 340 is the sticker price. We're not getting any financial aid because nobody is, right, at UC Santa Barbara out of state. Somebody's going to have to borrow $175,000 if we choose to go here. That's more than we're going to make, first year after graduation. So we want to pump the brakes. Now, obviously, I'm getting in the weeds here, but we want families to have access to this right away to help inform, their decisions. And then when it comes time to apply for financial aid, all you got to do is tell us where you're applying. We'll instantly tell you, okay, they require the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA. They require IDOC. They require non-custodial. Here's the deadline. And then we have line by line instructions through the FAFSA, through the CSS profile. I know a lot of you are familiar with Peggy, the fairy godmother financial aid. Her, in addition to the mechanics, here's where to create your FSA ID, go to College Board for your CSS profile. She's really good with her bedside manner. So she tries to, yeah, and you know her, she's good at helping people just create levity, bring the temperature down a little bit, and again, hopefully take the edge off of that stressful part of the process. So, anyways, make sure that you all and your students and families are leveraging what they have at their disposal here, and because it should, if we're doing anything right, make your job easier and just maximize the odds that they're having um, successful outcomes here. So I think those are my gets. Make sure again we're 2 weeks from now, October 1st. So we'll be in the FAFSA, we'll be in the CSS profile. We'll walk you guys through this year's what's new, what's different, what's wonky. It'll break that day, so it's unlikely we'll get into the FAFSA live, but we'll have screenshots of the whole thing by then, so we can kind of at least show it that way. But we'll expect it to break that day because it will. CSS profile will probably break too, but we will have that for you as well. But um, talk to us, right? Talk to us if you haven't already. Get in the platform, share this stuff with your families. Let me see. Actually, I have. Let me grab these links quickly because we are doing an expanded version of this presentation for families next week on the 24th. So give me a hot minute here. Um, oh, okay. If you want to um, invite parents to this presentation next week on the 24th, please do. That's at 7 Eastern time. And again, we'll do a couple of us will do an expanded version of this talking to parents. Yeah, all of our presentations are free for families if you're a high school partner. The only time we charge for presentations if our partner high schools want us to present only to their high schools and also invest in our software. Sometimes there's a cost associated with that. Otherwise, we do not charge for our presentations. And then one other one that is coming up that I think would be useful for you all. Tuesday, September 30th, so the night before October 1st, doing a FAFSA and CSS Pro FAFSA and CSS profile made easy presentation. And again, that is the day before it comes out. It will be keep this in house. Both of those forms will be live by then. The CSS profile will probably come out any day. They do a soft release every year. They don't announce it to the public, but that's how they folks like us that are in the know will battle test it before they announce it to the public October 1st. So the CSS profile usually comes out 10 days ish before October 1st. The FAFSA is usually a couple days before October 1st. Now, obviously, we've been delayed the last 2 years, so we'll see if they're early this year. But beta testing has been going really good. They're actually ahead of schedule for where they wanted to be at the moment, so we're probably in business. But please, if you are in Columbus this week, stop by the booth, right? College Aid Pro booth. Please, even if you think you can make it, even if you just can, even if you only have time to stop by for beer and a shot on Friday, please do. Um, we always love seeing you guys out in the wild, and we'll probably get a little wild if I have it my way on Friday. So that'll be fun. And yeah, write into us, counselor at collegeaidpro.com, or grab some time on our calendar, share our stuff with your parents, and I'll stick around for another minute if there's other questions. Otherwise, class will be dismissed here. Yeah, so the first link is a presentation that is going to be similar to what I did for you guys today. How do we lower our SAI? All of our presentations are for parents. Students are always invited as well, but it's the parents in our experience that are paying attention to this stuff. Of course, I'm oversimplifying here more than parents, but the presentation next week on the 24th will be focused on this stuff, strategies to lower your SAI. And then on the 30th, we'll be more in the weeds. Okay, it's officially FAFSA and CSS game time. Going through the forms, here's what they look like, do's and don'ts, etc. Okay. You would know if your school is a partner school, right? We would have a we and if unless you're new at your school, but we have a and there's most schools partner with us. They just take advantage of our free resources. They say, hey, here's a platform that you parents can use, and there's a free version for everybody. I should have mentioned this. Our premium version with all the bells and whistles is $4.99 a month. You can cancel at any time. It is free for all free and reduced lunch students. So premium version is free for all free and reduced lunch students or students that receive waivers, right? ACT or um, SAT waivers. It is free for if you're a Title One school, we will get your entire school on there for free, including school counselors. So most of our partners just take advantage of our free resources. There are a percentage of you, as you know, that pay for our premium version of the platform for the entire school, or in some cases, district. And we do the presentations just for your school. So that's where it always makes sense to just talk to us if you're curious to learn more. We'll get an idea of where you guys fit in that spectrum and figure out the best way to support you, and we're off to the races. All right, y'all. I appreciate you as always taking the time. I hope we get to hang out in Columbus this week, and if we do not, I will see you in 2 weeks. And please do not hesitate to reach out with anything in the meantime. Thanks all.